Hey, good morning. Scott Luton and Corinne Bursa with you here on Supply Chain. Now, welcome to today's live stream. Hey, Corinne, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you, Scott.
You as well. We've got a huge show here today. Really excited. We got a special guest. We're going to be talking about. We're going to be actually talking about and really diving into the good news and the bad news for supply chain planning in this new business environment that, hey, we all find ourselves in, whether we like it or not. Right, Corinne?
Absolutely. And you know, I love these good news, bad news, right? I want to look at both sides of the equation. So I can't wait to hear what our guest has to share.
Completely agree. But hey, folks out there in the cheap seats and the skyboxes, whatever we want to call it here today, you're part of the conversation. We want to hear from you too. So we hope you'll be sharing your takes and your thoughts, your POV, your expertise, you name it, throughout the next hour on our discussion. And we're going to share as many of those comments as we can get to. I already see a few folks chiming in. Corinne, before we bring in our guest, let's welcome in some of these folks where they're tuned in from. Looks like around the globe as always. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, we can't have a live stream conversation without our hard hitting production team. Big thanks to Catherine and Chantel and Amanda, you name it. Hey, Clay, the Diesel Phillips is with us here as well via LinkedIn. Great to see you, Clay and Catherine. Alimi is tuned in via LinkedIn. Hey, let us know where you're tuned in from, and make sure, hey, if I get y'all's name wrong, Corinne, they got to keep us honest, right? They got to make sure we get that right. Correct?
Absolutely. With a name like Corinne, I'm very sensitive to it. So please correct us if we get it wrong.
That's right. Let us know where you're tuned in from there, Alimi. Let's see. Bogaboo, I believe, tuned in via LinkedIn. Good evening to you. Great to have you here. Let us know where you're tuned in from. Hey, Jonathan is back with us via LinkedIn. Jonathan, don't tell me. I think he hails from Louisiana, Corinne, I believe. We may just sneak some food discussion in here today. And hey, good food in Louisiana, those things go hand in hand, right?
Hand in hand. Yes, sir.
But Jonathan, great to have you back. Look forward to your perspective today. Hey, Daisy, watching from Kenya via LinkedIn. Great to see you here today.
Wonderful. Yes.
And thanks for letting us know where you're dialed in from. We love making these connections, right, Corinne?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The world is getting smaller and smaller, and we love to know. And thank you for spending time with us. I know it's late in the day for you.
That is right. So, Daisy, great to have you. Hey, Bogaboo is from South Africa. Thank you for sharing that. I was just on this morning on This Week in Business History with our good friend Jenny Froome, who hails also from South Africa. Corinne, we completely kind of history geeked it up a bit this morning, had a blast, but welcome in to you. Nishant, tuned in from India via LinkedIn. Great to see you here, Nishant. Hey, Dr. Julia is back with us, Corinne.
Nice. Wonderful. From Florida too, right?
That's right. And we may talk about Florida a little bit here in a minute, but always enjoy your perspective, Julia, here today. Let's see. Marley, tuned in from Brazil via LinkedIn. Great to see you. Kevin, tuned in from New Jersey via LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us. Hey, GP, Gene Pledger is tuned in from Northern Alabama. Great to see you, Gene. Josh Goody, Gene, Josh, Julia, Jonathan, all these regulars. So good to have them. Josh has already given us a weather report, Corinne.
Look sunny. At that, 70 in Seattle, 70. I mean, that sounds like a winter day compared to what's happening in the rest of the world right now.
Man, you are so right. But Josh always keeps it real with us here. So Josh, looking forward to your perspective throughout the hour. We got so much to get into. We have a great guest we're going to be bringing on in just a minute. I wish we could hit everybody. Mandeep via LinkedIn, thanks so much for joining us here today. Khaled from Cairo via LinkedIn. Khalid, probably, rather. Great to have you here today. Hey, Dr. Rhonda is with us here today. She says, good morning, lovely humans. Taking a break to listen in and learn today. Corinne, lots of learning is going to happen here today, right?
Absolutely. And Dr. Rhonda, we are always glad when you can make time to join us. So thanks for being here.
That's right. One last thought. Rhonda and I hooked up, let's see, today's Wednesday. I think on Monday as we were prepping with the Redwood Logistics team for our Veterans and Logistics event, July 26th, next week. Rhonda has been gracious enough, generous enough to show up, be a part of our esteemed panel, and talk about mental health balance and wellness tips. So really appreciate that, Rhonda. We owe you one, and we'll see you next week. Okay, so welcome everybody, and we're going to try to get through as many comments as we can. We got a great show teed up, so keep them coming. But Corinne, with no further ado, I think we got to welcome in our big time home run guest here today. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it. I think this will be her first ever swoosh. So,
really?
Make it a good one.
I remember mine. It's going to be good. It's the simple things in life, folks. So with that said, we'll welcome in Valerie Tardif, Vice President, Product Management with N4 Supply Chain Planning. Hey, Valerie, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. That was awesome. Great swoosh.
Again,
welcome.
It's the simple things in life. We get the swoosh. Valerie, you're the star of the show, but that swoosh, I think he or she already has an agent because it gets everybody's attention. So, hey, it's we love the simple things. But swoosh aside, Corinne and Valerie, we've got a really neat starting point before we get into the good and the bad with supply chain planning for 2022 and beyond. We're going to have a lot of fun with a couple topics here today. So it is, Corinne and Valerie, National Hot Dog Day today. Who would have thunk, right? Now, last night was Major League Baseball's All-Star game. Unfortunately, I think for this audience here, the American League team won again. I think that's 9 or 10 in a row. But that aside, we'll stay on the good side. We all know that baseball and hot dogs go hand in hand. Baseball and good food goes hand in hand. So, Valerie, little birdie told us that you grew up a big Montreal Expos fan. I think you lived in Montreal. So what did those trips to the Expos games involve, especially from a food standpoint?
For me, it was such great fun. I mean, back in Montreal a little bit, couple, 5-6 years after the Olympics, the games were held at the Olympic Stadium. Huge place. Sometimes it's hard to pack it in, but for me as a teenager, it was a great time to go. $1 would get you in the bleachers.
Wow.
And we got to sit and of course, enjoy hot dogs and my favorite players back then. It was Gary Carter and Tim Raines and Andre Dawson. Who could go wrong? This was a great time.
I love it. One other name I noticed from those early 80s, Tim Wallach. Tim Wallach must have played for like 50 years in the major leagues. He was still around in the early 90s. And then one little factoid, and Corinne will come to you next, but this ballpark, Stade Olympique, is that right?
Yeah, the Stade Olympique.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good baseball, good food, great memories, great value, $1 to get you in. Valerie, it sounds like you could write some book on those early baseball days, right?
And on those hot summers, it was just the perfect place to go. It was an adventure for us. You took the subway, you got to walk through the Olympic complex to get there.
Wow.
And those famous hot dogs.
All right. So we could speak for a whole hour about Valerie's, I think, ballpark days. But Corinne, you've got some interesting memories growing up in Palm Beach County, Florida, right?
Yes. I'm born and raised in South Florida, northern Palm Beach County. But my Expos connection is that they did their spring training at the stadium in West Palm Beach. So it's like the West Palm Beach Municipal Stadium. And I think that the Expos trained there for spring training from like 61 to 72, and then again from like 81 to 1997. And guess what? They had to share the facility. And guess who they shared it with? They shared it with the Braves.
Really?
So we got to double dip and would get to go to Expo games and to Braves games. So I had very divided loyalties as a child because, like Valerie mentioned, it was very cheap to get in. I honestly think my parents would just drop me off there with my older brother and say, okay, we're coming back in 3 hours, and then pick us up afterwards.
Wow.
So they'd give us a couple of bucks for popcorn, hot dogs, and a soda, and we'd sit out there and roast and watch baseball all day long. It was awesome.
I love it. Corinne and Valor, we're gonna have to dedicate some time to talk sports memories and journeys, maybe after the show. But hey, really quick, Corinne, you were sharing something pre-show that we all thought was really special. You and your family were actually watching live when Hank Aaron, the Hammer, broke Babe Ruth's record. That is really cool.
Yes. Yeah. 46 years ago today. So happy anniversary to Hammer and Hank for all he achieved with his 755 home runs.
Man. And that is really, we all know the impact he had. So gone way too soon. But nevertheless, Corinne and Valerie, thank you for indulging us with a little bit of food, a little bit of baseball, a little bit of sports. Really quick, before we get started here today, I want to welcome in, hey, Jim from Pennsylvania. Great to have you here via LinkedIn. Josh Goody makes a great point. Can't believe the heat wave in Europe, he says. Hope that everyone's doing okay. Last summer, it was 108 degrees with 60% humidity. And as we were talking pre-show, no one owns an AC unit up there. So you all have my sympathy and empathy, Josh. And we completely agree with you. And Godspeed, best wishes to all the folks getting through this really tough time. And then finally, Oluwatosin is with us here today via LinkedIn from Nigeria. Great to have you back. Always enjoy your perspective here. Dr. Rhonda grew up in South Jersey, huge Phillies fan, she says. Love watching our fighting Philly baseball players while enjoying some baseball favorite foods. She was in the cotton candy pretzels with lots of yellow mustard. Ha, ha, ha. The good old days, she says. Love it. All right. So y'all keep the comments coming. We're going to try to work through all of them as we have a great chat with Valerie and Corinne here today. Let's get started. Let's get to work. So Valerie, I want to get your thoughts initially as we kind of level set with what has changed in this new world of supply chain planning. Let's start there.
Well, I mean, we live in unprecedented times, right? I mean, even before the pandemic, we were dealing with new tariffs. We were dealing with supply chain disruptions. Now we have, global climate changes, and that's just changed the way supply chains really, can operate. We see so much, with our customers and the companies that I work with are facing, kind of new disruptions, and it's just made supply chain operations, supply chain planning, I think, completely different.
Yes. We got some of the old challenges still with us. We got new challenges still with us. Corinne, based on what Valerie just shared and some of your thoughts, what's your take here with what has changed in this new environment?
Yeah, I'm with Valerie. I think it's just coming at us faster, and we have to be much more responsive in how we plan. Yep. And we need to evaluate multiple scenarios for the business. So Valerie, as you're helping companies and working with them, what's changing from a planning perspective to really address some of these challenges?
Well, one of the things that we see almost everywhere, irrespective of industries, is that it seems to be much more supply driven than in the past, right? I was in a recent conversation with a colleague and customer. He said, before the pandemic, my customers were really banging on the table about good service, on time, in full. And now, as post pandemic, customers are thanking me. Thank you for taking my order. So what a change, right? And it just changes our focus from, of course, doesn't take away the need for meeting demand and for delivery, but it means that, with the variable supply that we have, we need to be more creative and sometimes do more with what we have.
Yeah, Valerie, I mean, it is so accurate to say there are more constraints today than we've ever seen, right? So whether that constraint is around product supply or whether it's about, distribution capacity or the ability for the ports to handle volume that's coming in, or capacity as we think about talent, right? Mm-hmm. Having available talent to address all these new challenges. What are some of your thoughts on how we make talent productive sooner, more, or take some of the routine activities and automate those. What are you seeing in this area?
I love that you bring it up, because for me, working with this new talent that's coming in is really a great challenge, but it's really a great fun.
Yeah.
We saw the Great Resignation. Now a lot of our supply chains are trying to bring people back, but it's a new type of work. We know more people are working from home. So they need digital tools, right? They need to be able to access data and information wherever they are. Sometimes it's with a lot of newer talent as well, and the newer talent brings new skills and new capabilities. I think I of course I'm the mother of some young children, young adults now, so they're not children anymore, and I see how they work, and it's really amazing, much more digitally native, and much more able to handle massive amount of data, more analytical. Do you see the same? I'd love to hear our audience, right?
Yes.
What do they see from
Valerie,
them?
that's a great call out. So folks, we'd love to kind of hear what you have to say and what you're seeing, whether when it comes to what's new in this supply chain planning environment, or when it comes to talent, what are you seeing there? I would just add, Corinne, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, but new data is coming out that's showing more and more burnout in the supply chain profession, right? Regardless of talent, right? Because there's been, as we all know, a lot more pressure on people, on systems, on technology. We're going to touch on that later. But Corinne, leaders, they've got old challenges, but they've got a lot of new challenges based on this environment too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And burnout's a very real thing. I mean, we have all lived through this heightened sense of urgency, and supply chain has taken center stage, which I believe is fantastic, right? So now we need to continue to kind of command that center stage and be very active in guiding business strategy. But that's been a lot of pressure, and
Right.
and we've asked a lot of our planning teams and our execution teams. And I think to Valerie's point, yes, we've got these digital natives that are entering and gaining good authority around the planning practices, and they embrace technology. And we
Right.
cannot do the things that need to be done to transform global supply chains without technology.
Right.
And so I think it's even more important today because, Scott, I say this phrase all the time, but we need to replace risky inventory with valuable information and valuable insights, and elevate what that talent is doing so that we can really take advantage as we attract and retain top talent. They want to use new tools that are going to help them see the analytics and use their creativity
Yes.
to solve problems.
Hey, one other quick comment, Valerie and Corinne. I was just sitting down with a couple of incredible supply chain students and a wonderful professor, former practitioner from Western Michigan University, right? Top 25 on the Gartner list,
Yep.
Great school. But one of the things that came up that I loved, Valerie and Corinne, is one of the students was talking about her role in an internship. And she was talking about this experience she had, I think, with her supervisor. And she was asking lots of questions, and including, why do we do it that way? And the supervisor was like, hey, you ask a bunch of questions. And she's like, you're right, I do. And I'm going to keep asking questions until it makes sense. And Valerie and Corinne, when I think about that, that is a wonderful development, right? Imagine all the innovation and the new ways of solving problems that's going to come with these not only naturally curious, but like passionately curious professionals. Valerie, how does that sound in your ears?
Yeah, so sometimes I call them impatient. So they no longer have the time to read thick manuals or to follow instructions. They're much more intuitive, I think, in the way they solve problems, very collaboratively as well, right? I mean, they've grown up on Discord and in Slack and Teams, and so they ask each other all the time about questions. It's a constant conversation.
Yep.
In our products at Infor, we're very passionate about learning and working with this new early talent, right? How do they think? How do they work? And how do we weave this into all of our different technologies to to be, to make them productive, and therefore to make our organizations more productive.
So, hey, really quick, Corinne, I'm going to pass it back to you, but it's like Valerie was taking a snapshot of my 3 or 4 screens and the apps I'm on right this minute, Valerie. I feel like you're looking over my shoulder. But hey, really quick, Jenny says, at the university, and Jenny, great to see you here today. At the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we are certainly seeing more interest in the supply chain field now that it's in the headlines. That's wonderful. Shashi, great to have you back from the UAE via LinkedIn. Thanks so much for joining us. Doug says, we're seeing huge constraints in direct labor and warehousing since this role needs to be on site, thus leaders placing a focus on technology and automation to augment current labor dynamics and shifts. Great comments there, Doug. And thanks for joining us here today. Gene, dividends from good supplier relationships paid many times over. Fundamentals are even more important. And on that note, Corinne, I'm going to throw it over to you with this one observation. I was watching a supply chain leader on Twitter, one of our friends of the show earlier today, or maybe it was last night, and he was talking about how folks that were calling on him, especially shippers, before the pandemic and then disappeared the last 3 years, and now they're trying to grab lunch with them and that kind of stuff. Nope. If you can't take care of me, in these crazy, challenging times, he was really making a point to Gene's point about these critical relationships through the good, through the bad, through the easier times, through the tougher times. Those are what gets us all, further down this journey. But Corinne, where are we going next with Valerie?
So Valerie, I do want to kind of tie these two ideas together, because you talked about in this new world, right? This post-COVID world, we're grappling with constraints in the area of supply, right? Which changes our mindset in how we plan. And then we have this new talent pool that's coming to the table with arms wide open, ready to embrace technology. Talk to us a little bit about how those, how the planning practice has changed as a part of those two elements coming together.
So one of the things I feel strongly is that this new talent, and of course, in supply chains, even people that have been around for a long time want to make decisions that are data driven. Mm-hmm. They want to, but there's a lot of data and a lot of, sometimes, people are, say, buried in data and can't find really the information. And so I think that planning and supply chain systems will have to change to be bringing this data forth in an intuitive manner so that we can and recommend decisions. I think it's no longer just about, go through the analytics and figure out the answer, but it's about what are the system recommending, what are your peers doing, across your organization, and how do you become more efficient. So to me, it ties the data and analytics. It ties, be more, systems have to be more collaborative, and allow you to share your notes and your thoughts process. So, and really supporting the decisions in a much more, I think, intuitive way. And that's a big area where at Infor, right, we're looking at is how to make our products, sensing the disruptions and analyzing what needs to be corrected, and then helping customers correct their plans, make them more feasible plans, especially when you have supply constraints, more efficient, more oriented toward profit and not so much cost, and so on.
Yeah, I think that those are all really, really valuable points, because we are modeling multiple scenarios now and elevating that data or those analytics. But you just mentioned something really important that I think is so natural for your conversation that you don't realize how important it is. And that is the ability to grade the outcomes, to go back and see, how did we do? Mm-hmm. Was our plan feasible? What was our performance? What do we do differently in the future? And this is an area where technology is starting to really drive additional incremental value for businesses. So I think that's very exciting.
I agree. I think that through something we've never seen before, is that we're modeling processes through technology more and more. At first, it was, capturing the process and the transitions, but now it's following how are people operating, doing the processes. A lot of really great user analytics tell us, where are users clicking?
Yeah.
How are they finding the information quickly? Are they, and delivering this, delivering the information that they need, whether it's, as you said, how am I doing? What should I do? Or even, what's the best optimal way to go forward?
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's some really interesting points that you just made. When we think about how the planning process has changed, in this post-COVID world, if you think today, Valerie, about the requirements or the important attributes of a successful planning process, what do those look like? Or what would you encourage our community to look at or dive deeper into as they look at transforming their supply chain performance?
Well, I think one of the things that's very important is you need to have a process that is really tailored for the industry and the type of business that you're doing. Whether if you're a manufacturer, if you're a food manufacturer or beverage manufacturer, it's very different than if you're, producing computers or sensors or automotive components. And so for us at Infor, we've made a conscious decisions to really focus on key industries, but to provide, essentially very complete set of capabilities to support, our key industries. And that, for example, in the food and bev industry, we work with customers that are milk producers, such as Aurora Organic Milk. They not only use our planning tools to plan demand and supply, but they're looking at how to optimize their recipes with the milk components that they have, right? You could make butter, you can make buttermilk, you can make yogurt.
Valerie, just one quick question. They are big proponents of pairing that milk with Oreos, right, Valerie? That's the $1 million question. Right?
Of course. And want to bring the hot dogs in here, but hot dogs and milk, maybe not.
Maybe not today,
but beer is another example, right? Hot dogs and beer. I mean, and this is another industry that over and over again our customers are selecting Infor because of deep knowledge in how to plan and schedule beer production. And in fact, sometimes we did the rough calculation and found that over almost 1 in every 3 beer in the world is actually scheduled or planned with an Infor product. So that shows you how it's very key. How this capability is key, right? And personally, I feel that that's going to be a key component to succeed in this new world. What do we need to do? Well, we need to change our planning so that we consider what's our competitive advantage, what are the type of, what's our industry, who are we competing with, and how do we squeeze or find all of the different ways to be successful as a manufacturer, or especially as a distributor.
Right. Yeah. As a business leader. All right, really quick, Corinne, she shared a lot there, and you and I both are probably licking our chops of what we want to comment on, and we got some comments we'll get to. But first, let's just acknowledge, based on the 1 in 3, is that amongst many things that have allowed us to get through the last 3 years, Infor is taking care of that beer supply chain. And we have Valerie and the whole Infor team and all those wonderful brew masters and that workforce to thank there. So Valerie, from all of the world of supply chain, thank you very much. But Corinne, please share kidding aside, please share your reactions of what Valerie just shared. And I'm gonna get some of these comments here from a lot of folks in the cheap seats.
Yeah, awesome. Because Valerie, you're right. First of all, Scott, 1 in 3 is a pretty impressive statistic there. But Valerie, I think you're making a really important point. We're in a marketplace now where there is maturity and industry specific capabilities become differentiators for us, right? So You mentioned food and beverage, but at the same time, fashion, right? And fashion is very different than food and beverage. And I know that those are two industries that Infor really has a very, very nice track record in serving those challenges. And those are very different. You might still say, well, there's demand planning, there's inventory optimization, and then we got to make, move, and deliver the goods, but it's done differently, right?
That's right. That's right. So, how you work with your suppliers, how you distribute, the seasonality in the type of products, whether, fashion has a seasonality in their demand. Food productions will often have a seasonality in the supply that they're counting on. And so really for us, it's about, packaging all of those capabilities that you need in one solution suite, from new soup to nuts, from the operation planning, supply planning, operations, running your your distribution, and it's really making our customers more successful because they have that solid system that they can count on, which has been tailored and designed for their industry, and brings all of these things, as you said, Karen, that we might not think about. So, how hard can it be to make beer? But there's a lot of complexities, and it's, multi-million dollar operations, these breweries. And so
massive demand too, a whole different scale. But so,
and the pandemic has brought a lot of different need for different products, right? We have discovered many different beverages, different types of beer. And I think that's another way where the world is changing, the proliferation of new demands and of new products. It's important to plan that, efficiently. And
yes. Valerie, so many good points here. I think one final thought, and I'm going to share some comments here. We've seen mass customization as a preference on the consumer side. Both y'all touched on that. And then, on the technology side, that one of the big points you've been making is that practical customization of the technology and platforms that folks are using based on industry, based on operation, based on the needs of the business. That's a really important point. Really quick, we've got some great comments, and then Corinne, we've got another big question that you're going to be posing to Valerie here in just a minute. But going back to the talent side, Rhonda says, I see some anxiety, honestly. In part, I attribute that to uncertainty and COVID-19 restrictions and social isolation. That was kind of glossed over because we were so busy trying to solve problems.
True.
Now we can breathe a little and are noticing how the past 2+ years impacted our psychological and physiological, please don't ask me to say those two words again, well-being, kindness, and support. It's all so important. Dr. Rhonda, hey, you heard it from the expert. Great points there. And these are big factors that leaders have to take into account, regardless of supply chain or any industry. Shashi shares, Corinne, constraints are so many. COVID is gone, yet close. We continue, he says, to be affected with Ukrainian war. He mentions it's getting tougher as we're trying to all fix the puzzles. Great point there. He also says digitization is at full swing with every organization, because it's a wake-up call for CEOs. Supply is all the talk of town in boardrooms. Analytics and data science modeling is at the forefront. And then finally, two quick comments here. And y'all keep these comments going. They're wonderful. Gene says, analytics has been looking backward. Now we have to look forward where there aren't precedents. Such a great point, Gene. And then Russell says, hey, just one comment. The leaders must be 100% aligned with the supply chain chief supply chain officer. Just technology alone cannot support the collapses. Excellent point there, Russell. Yeah. Okay, Corinne, back to you.
Well, I want to jump in on Russell's point from the perspective of it is more than technology. We've got to be looking at our processes, and we have to look at data. So as we're harnessing more and more machine learning or artificial intelligence or analytics, Valerie, as you're describing, to get not just backward looking, as Gene said, but forward looking from a predictive and prescriptive, what should I do perspective, right? These are new and exciting areas where technology can really differentiate the business. Valerie, talk to us for just a minute about where some of those investments are going from an Infor perspective.
Right. So as we've all said, right, I perfectly agree with the technology. I often say it's really people, process, and technology is the last in that list because that's where it belongs. We talked a little bit about people, right? About, I think key is, recognizing that we need, our people are the operators, there are the people that run our supply chains, and we need to have software and processes that meet them and that continue to grow with them. So at Infor, we mentioned very people centric, building role based experiences that a supply planner might be doing something very different than a demand planner, yet very different than their managers. And so how do we support their operations? How do we support the collaboration that they need? But also from the process perspective, I find it fascinating how we're building more, process mining and process intelligence so that, we help our customers where they are today at the level of maturity that they have, right? So they might be, using still, making some, manual, some using some manual tools still. Sometimes you can see Excel, but more and more growing in their use of analytics, making it intuitive, and I call it, natural as part of their processes. And then, but also working with them and suggesting what's the next step, in your process. What should you be considering? Highlighting um, some new observations that we see. So, for example, in the demand planning area, we're looking continually at what drives demand from an outside in, like external perspective. Is it driven by oil prices? In some industries, it is. Sometimes it's driven by social media or consumer preferences. And so, bringing these signals in, and then helping people maybe craft new promotions or maybe craft new new forecasting mechanisms that help them leverage that.
Yeah, those are great points, I think, and very practical from the perspective of we do have access to new data. And oh, by the way, post-COVID, my history is not now an indicator of future demand. We've got new demand signals, as you were expressing, Valerie. And so I think that puts even more emphasis on leveraging technology to uncover some of these new patterns for our business and to get in front of those trends.
Exactly.
Valerie, when a company is starting its supply chain transformation, where do they start? Or, what recommendations do you have about, great places to get started or to make an impact quickly?
Well, I think that looking at peers in your industry, looking at what your competitors, but also kind of your other your suppliers and your customers, what they're doing in your ecosystem, is really valuable. I mean, I encourage companies to share their roadmaps, right, where they are and how they want to grow. And at Infor, in fact, we're part of the greater Coke Industries conglomerate, and we have the knowledge sharing networks where we share among each other, among the different companies, how to manage talent, what are their technologies that we find exciting, how what are the problems most important to solve. And so to me, that ecosystem brings really good support, and that includes you guys bringing us new trends and new ideas, and analysts and others. But then also, I think it's important to look at what makes you as an organization who you are, right? What's your competitive advantage, and then really build on that. If you're a food manufacturer making frozen meals, or if you're a manufacturer of components for into industrial manufacturing, it's important to know what are the challenges and what's most important to address, and how to build and continue that competitive edge that you have. Because every investment has to be evaluated based on, its return, and I feel that it's not enough to be like everybody else, right? The agnostic software, it's one size fits none today. It really needs to be about tailored for you and for your challenges.
All right.
Yeah, I love that last statement.
Yes.
Wait a minute. One size fits none, right? It's not one size fits all. One size fits none, because it does need to be tailored, as you're saying, Valerie, to the problems or the biggest constraints to be addressed, or I'm an optimist, the biggest opportunities that can be harnessed in that global network as well.
That's right.
Valerie, you got to say that louder for the folks in the back. One size fits none. You got to make sure, as you're saying, you got to make sure the investment fits your operation. You got to make sure it's aligned with where you're placing other bets. And gosh, that decision can't just rest in the C-suite. Get out and make those decisions with your people, not to your people, as someone said on an earlier show. So, Valerie, a lot of good stuff. Let me share a couple of quick comments here.
Yes.
It's always interesting where folks gravitate to what topics, because Valerie's putting out a bunch of goodness. But he goes, Rhonda says, cheers to that beer revelation. Shashi says, beer kept us going. Jenny says, beer supply definitely essential in Wisconsin, although our Milwaukee Brewers do spring training out in Arizona. That's a great comment there. Jenny also says, knowledge sharing upstream and downstream, so important. Completely agree with you, Jenny. And I'm going to share this. I'm going to share this question from Rhonda. Before we're going to get into some resources that Valerie and the N4 team have, but both of y'all take look at this question we got here. What contingency planning is happening in the event of technology grid breakdown due to larger scale hackers or foreign attacks on our systems? So both of y'all were talking earlier, as we know, the modeling and scenario planning, contingency planning, it's no longer a nice to have. You got to be doing it. Your team's got to be doing it. Not to put both of y'all on the spot, but any thoughts around, the technology, those types of threats in global supply chain right now? Valerie, any thoughts?
So, well, I feel strongly that cloud and, cloud systems are going to help us in the long term, or even in the short term today with, with attacks and with security problems. When your system is in the cloud, it may feel, for some industries or some companies, it's a little uncomfortable at first to let go. But then I feel that in a way, it takes away a lot of the troubles, of maintaining and, all that whole cost of ownership.
Agreed.
But then in addition to this, it really strengthens your security, because in the cloud, systems are built by experts, right? That are looking at, redundancy, that are looking at keeping data secure, that are looking at, multi-factor authentication and encryption. And in a way, a good cloud system, and of course, Infor, we pride ourselves on our technology and on the, the experts that have helped us build that. That's key. And that helps take away the fears of many CIOs would have on that.
Well stated, Valerie. And Rhonda, great question. Corinne, your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. And Rhonda, great question, because guess what? The cybersecurity is now on the agenda for the chief supply chain officer. So not just the CIO and the technology team, but that chief supply chain officer is thinking about cybersecurity as well. So Valerie, I agree with you. I think cloud-based systems are doing a better job than on-premise systems in looking at measures and best practices to keep our access safe and make sure that if an attack happens, that there's backup and strategy that's going to get you back on board faster than most companies are able to do if they are still operating in an old client server environment or an on-premise environment for their business.
Yep. Well said.
That's a very important point.
The cloud technology, because that's what you got to give the people what they want. And that shift has been taking place for years. It's all about the cloud now, as both of you are speaking to. It's almost like self-checkout lanes. When they were first initially introduced, everybody was like, I kind of want to have that service. Now they're all the rage. I hadn't talked to someone in a grocery store in like 7 years, Corinne and Valerie, and that's good for me. We were talking earlier this week about a checkout less retail experience, which is now kind of the next generation. So who knows? It's amazing times we're living in. All right. So Corinne and Valerie, really appreciate all of your thoughts here. We're on a great question. I wish we could get to Mohammed's question and Shashi's question. Maybe y'all can connect with Valerie and Corinne later, but let's make sure. So Valerie, you and the N4 team brought a resource today that I think will give folks a lot more information about all that you're doing when it comes to supply chain planning. N4, tell us about this first link that our team's going to drop in the comments.
Yes. So at N4, we have a very many different solutions to meet different business needs. But in particular, I'm very proud of our supply chain planning tool, which of course covers demand planning and supply planning. Has a layer for integrated business planning, support the S&OP process, and linked with our production scheduling. So again, necessary for many of our industries is to take the supply plans and make sure that they're scheduled, and that you get all of that, the ability to manipulate schedules and to have scenario analysis and so on. So that's that first link, our brochure, part of our
the whole enchilada, Valerie, is what I'm hearing. The whole enchilada. You can learn more about all that the N4 supply chain planning team does. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
We can't get by without our food analogies, Valerie and Corinne. Let's see here. And it looks like our team's dropping that first link. And then the second link, if you want to reach out to Valerie or the team in N4, learn more, have a conversation, compare notes, talk shop. Y'all can tell Valerie, Corinne, all of us are passionate and would welcome those types of conversations, but we're going to drop that link in there as well. Let's see here. Josh making a good point here. When it comes to data, we have a less than ideal backup that requires a lot of manual entry. Basically, an Excel spreadsheet we upload to compensate for whatever the system missed during the attack outage. Josh, you're probably speaking to a lot of organizations out there, because as we can't have a supply chain conversation without talking about spreadsheets, because they're still prevalent, right? But it's time, just like it's time to change how we plan, it's time to change how we lead supply chains and lead businesses. So y'all got to take the advice and act on the insights you've heard from Valerie and Corinne here today. Great point, Josh. Okay, so Valerie, you're given, as we kind of come down the home stretch here, you're given a big keynote we hear about. Tell us about that, and tell us also how can folks connect with Valerie Tardif.
Yes, so I'll be co-presenting with colleagues at Georgia Pacific on the transformation that Georgia Pacific is doing with supply chain planning at CSCMP, the EDGE conference in Nashville in September. So I'm really excited. Really excited to present, their challenges and their successes. So we'll be Alejandra and Alejandra from Georgia Pacific will be on stage with me. Wonderful. And we'll be at the Gardner conference in London as well, an N4 group. So it's also another way to meet with us. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, and I love to get connections and meet new people. This is how the world has changed, right? From business cards to our virtual network. So feel free to reach out to me, or of course at N4's website, you can reach us there as well.
Love it. Hey, we have got. I want to share a little tidbit here, since you're heading to that conference. I switched over from printing out business cards to this one little card that when folks ask for a card, I show them this, and they can scan it with their phone, and it lists every information you ever want to know about me on my contact card in their phone. And I've tried this out at a couple conferences, and folks love it. So check that out, Valerie, as you head to these conferences, and for that matter, Corinne, everybody's getting back in person. You know, conferences are coming back. It sounds like a great presentation that Valerie and her colleague from Georgia Pacific are giving. The other thing,
yeah, absolutely. And Valerie, we didn't really dive into your role with Infor, but I think it's come out in this conversation. It is probably worth just a brief description from you on where your role sits, because you're, connecting market opportunities and customer needs and new technology innovation. So tell us what it means to be Vice President of Product Management within Infor. What does that mean to, the typical person that might be joining us today?
Yes, I love to. It's a great role, and I love this role, and I've been doing it now for several years, because it really is. It's about serving our customers, right? First and foremost, it's about organizations around us, making them more successful and more profitable. And so for me, it's all about making our customers more successful, and also increasing their level of maturity. So there's a bit of education, there's a bit of what does it take to be successful in this new world. And the way we do this is as product management, right? We're listeners to the market, listeners to what our customers need, to what what the competition, what everybody is doing, and making decisions on how to bring that most effectively in our technologies and in our services. Because today we're no longer just software providers, right? We're service providers. We provide the whole enchilada. And so how do you do that really really well? It's what I love to do.
clearly, you can see the passion. It just exudes passion. You clearly love what you do, and you're great at it. And I appreciate the insights and expertise you've dropped here. But hey, we're going to surprise you, Valerie. Look at what Shashi has put in here in the comments. He says, Infor has helped us to modernize our warehouse processes to fix service level agreements with the business, to monitor inventory visibility and matrices. Hey, that was an unexpected little endorsement there, Valerie, huh?
That's awesome. Yes.
Very cool.
Really, really nice. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing,
Very nice.
Shashi.
Very nice.
And Josh is also, a lot of folks have mentioned the importance of Rhonda's question from earlier. And I appreciate both of y'all speaking to that. Okay, so folks, if you're in Nashville at the CSCMP conference, make sure, don't miss Valerie's keynote with her colleague there from Georgia Pacific. Valerie, please make this commitment that you're definitely going to get some Hattie B's when you're in Nashville, Tennessee. Can we get a picture from you?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, it's been such a pleasure. Folks, you make sure you connect with Valerie via LinkedIn. Check out those links. Corinne, before we let Valerie go, home run guess, as we promised here today, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for the insight and for the the baseball experience too. I can't let that one go. But I love your point of view and some of the things that you've shared with us today. So thanks so much for being with us, Valerie.
Thank you. No, it's my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. And
safe travels to Nashville. You'll wow them there too. But big thanks for your time with us over the last hour. We've been talking with Valerie Tardif with Infor. Thanks so much, Valerie.
Thank you.
Home run. I tell you, you can clearly tell that Valerie loves what she does. She brings a wealth of been there, done that knowledge, but also not just, again, like one of the main points we made here today, not just looking back in the rearview mirror, looking ahead, changing, new change for how we're leading the industry in a different spot. So a lot of good stuff there from Valerie. But what was got two questions for you before we wrap here, Corinne. First off, what was one of your favorite things that Valerie shared here today? And then we're going to make sure folks know how to connect with you and Tech Talk.
Yeah, I think Valerie did an excellent job of really tying together the fact that the world has changed. And so our technology needs to change as well. And oh, by the way, the people using the technology, our talent, is approaching the problems in a whole different way, right? These digital natives are embracing technology and kind of helping to push it forward faster, I think, from an adoption perspective. So we can't plan the same way today that we did 10 years ago. It's time to really embrace what technology can do. And as one of our listeners shared, get out of the spreadsheets, get it into the system and start automating that process.
That's right. Josh Goody, thanks for weighing in here today so much. All right, really quick. A lot of folks have enjoyed Dr. Julia Puja, also enjoyed it via LinkedIn, saying thanks to Valerie, Dr. Rhonda. Valerie hit a home run, as we knew, hit a home run like Hank here today. But Corinne, beyond today's conversation, let's make sure folks know how to connect with you and the well-recognized, award-winning Tech Talk Digital Supply Chain podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And I should have welcomed all of our Tech Talk movers and shakers who are going to join us today. So thank you for being here, and please share those episodes of Tech Talk out with your community as well. We're seeing great growth and momentum around those topics of digital supply chain. So it's been a lot of fun, and just a wide variety of topics to tackle in the coming months. But you know what, Scott? I'm going to be with you and Greg on Monday.
That's
I'm going to be back for the buzz.
Back for the buzz, and one of our favorite broadcasts. Who knows? Valerie may show up for a buzz at some point soon. That'd be a really big buzz episode. But looking forward to that, Corinne. Me and you and Greg will be tackling some of the biggest stories taking place across global business on Monday, every Monday at 12 noon Eastern time. So y'all join us for that. All right. Hey, Shashi, we appreciate this comment here. Appreciate everything you dropped in the comments today. You and all of your colleagues, a lot of goodness coming out of the cheap seats, the skyboxes here today. So I appreciate that, Shashi. Okay. So Corinne, we definitely want to make sure folks connect with Valerie. They connect with Corinne Bursa. We've got links, LinkedIn links in the show notes to make it easy. Y'all check out the supply chain planning team at Infor via that link. Connect the dots. I'm sure Valerie would welcome an opportunity to talk shop with any of our listeners. But Corinne, whatever you do, beyond all of that, right? On behalf, and big thanks to our production team, by the way, for all that they do. But on behalf of Corinne Bursa, this is Scott Luton signing us off here today, but challenging you to do good, to give forward, and to be the change that's needed. On that note, we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.